Okay, today's demonstration is going to be for making a ring. I'm going to show you the back end work on the computer, which you wouldn't have to do. I set all that up for you, but I want you to know the process that I go through. So I'm going to open a new file. I'm going to set up the material, and it's already set up for me, but this is 12 inches wide by 3 inches tall, and it's exactly half an inch thick. You will need a piece at least that big. It could be 4 inches wide, it could be 14 inches long, but the minimum size is 12 by 3. You'll go over to the planer, you'll plane it to exactly half an inch thick, and hit OK. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to draw a whole bunch of circles out here. Okay, and I'm going to line them up from smallest to and then heading to the right to biggest. And one of these cores, one of these little blanks that we're going to cut out will work. I'm not sure which one because there's some accuracy measurements that don't quite work out, and so we kind of have to guess a little bit and then draw a whole bunch bigger, a whole bunch of smaller, and see which one fits. So I'm doing a size 10 ring right now. I measured with the digital calipers. The exact size of the ring, according to the calipers, is 0.927 inches. I'm going to create a circle like that. I'm going to move it over to the side because the next circle I draw, it's going to bring over these crosshairs. Okay, so I'm going to do one that's like a couple thousand smaller, 0.924. And you know what I did? I just changed that one to 0.94. Let me back up. Okay, there's 0.297. I need to hit apply. That's the exact size that I think the ring is. But I'm going to draw another ring, and I'm going to make it a couple thousand smaller. Okay, bring it over here. That's smaller than the original. That's the original. I'm going to do a couple more bigger also. And so the next ring core, I'm going to say the original's 927. I'm going to go 930. I wonder why it's not bringing them in exactly over the center, but it's okay. And I'll do one even bigger than that, 935. Arrange this. Let's do one even bigger. Let's go 5 thousandths bigger. And you're like, Clark, this is, oops, back up. I just did that one. 935. Click off 940. Create. All right, you guys are like, Clark, you have OCD, my friend, because you're talking 3, 4, 5 thousandths of an inch. That's crazy. Yeah, kinda. I'll admit it. But if you're off by a couple thousandths, it won't fit. If you're off by a couple thousandths and it's too big, it'll be loose. So, I mean, I just want a perfect fit. So I'm kind of drawing a whole bunch of circles, and then we'll see which one fits best and use that one. And then we'll probably end up, honestly, throwing the rest of them away. I'm spacing these out so that the tool has room to cut between these. I'm going to group all of these center cores together. I hit G on the keyboard. So now I don't have to get individual ones. If they're ungrouped, I could move this one up and down. But if I want to move all of them up and down, I group them. Okay. Let's see. Center all of them. Perfect. And I'm going to say cut a pocket inside of these, exactly half an inch deep, and do this in 2 passes. If we do a half inch deep hole in 1 pass, it's a lot of material really quick, and it's not good for the tool. I'm also going to say ramp into the material, so it won't cut straight down a 1/4 inch. It'll kind of ramp side to side while it's cutting in the downward direction. Once it reaches that depth that it wants to cut, then it'll start going full bore. All right, let's hit calculate and preview. Oh, slow this down. Preview. See how it's doing them in 2 passes. And that is where the center metal ring core is going to go. We could stop there, but I've actually found a little easier way for you guys to do this. So if I take all of these holes that it's going to cut, and I say I'm going to offset, so I'm going to take this shape and I'm going to draw a circle a little bit bigger, and in this case I said go a 1/4 inch deep or 1/4 inch bigger, and I hit offset. Now I just took this circle and drew a 1/4 inch bigger circle around it. Since they were grouped, it did it around all of them. So I'm going to grab these and I'm going to group this outside circle. Hit G for group. Now I can grab one, I actually grab them all, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, all right, we have the core. Now we want to cut out the shape of a ring around the core. So I'm going to profile or do the outside. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch deep, and let's do this in 2 passes also. And I'm going to add tabs so that this ring core won't fall out of the material on its very last pass. Here and here. And I'm going to tell it, okay, add all those tabs, and I'm going to say have this tab 1/2 inch thick and have the length of the tab 1/2 inch wide, and calculate. Let's preview what we just calculated. Now it's cut out the outside shape of this, and it's left a little tab so that the blank won't fall out, and they're 1/2 inch deep. So if I take this to the CNC, I have it cut out all these different size rings, different by a couple thousandths. One of these will work for the exact core that I'm using, depending on the batch that the manufacturer does. If they manufacture a batch of rings one week and they're a little smaller by a couple thousandths or a little bigger by a couple thousandths the next week, I have a whole bunch that I can choose from so I can get the perfect size fit. So remember, 3 by 12 is the material size that your 3 by 12 is the material size. You can be a little bit bigger. You can't be any smaller. If you're smaller, we risk the clamp on the edges, on the very corners, that you're going to clamp this piece of material down to the CNC with. We risk hitting the clamps with the tool that's doing the cutting. So you can be bigger, then the clamps are actually farther away from the cutting area. That's fine, but you cannot be smaller. And you're going to plane this and drum sand it to exactly 1/2 inch thick, so it's ready to go. And then bring me your piece. We'll put it on the CNC, and we'll go from there. Okay, we're going to make a ring. You need to go to the wood room in here. You're going to find a piece that's at least 3 inches wide, 12 inches long. It's best if it doesn't have any knots, because you don't want a knot in your ring, because that's a weak spot. Okay, I've got a piece of walnut. It is 4.5 by 19 and 3 or 18 and 3/4, plenty big. I'm going to plane it to a 1/2 inch thick. Turn on the dust collector. One inch, one turn more. First setting for the first pass for everything. so I can drum sand it to exactly 1/2 inch. Right now, if I read this, it is 0.53 inches. I'm gonna drum sand this to exactly 0.50. 0.53, take it down to 0.50. 0.50 is decimal for 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna set the readout on the sander to 0.53. Okay, just go 2 decimal places. You don't have to go 3. So this brings me to my next point. So the readout says 0.520. The calipers say 0.50. So do I trust this mechanism that students come over here and they mess with, they bump and whatever? Or do I trust these calipers, which I can tune and calibrate, set to 0 while it's closed and measure exactly? I always don't go off from here. I go off from here for my first setup, but after that I start using the calipers to get exact. 0.50, done. So this readout is actually 0.02 of an inch off right now. Like, that's not much. So it's off, yes, it's 100ths of an inch off though. So, all right, let's go over here. Get a straight edge and a pen or a pencil, and I'm going to draw a line from opposite corner to opposite corner, and do the same thing over here, opposite corner to opposite corner. This, we have just done something in math that they call bisect. We bisected this rectangle to find the exact center. The center is important here in a minute. I'm going to take this and clamp it down, but I don't want the edge of the clamps where the cutting tool is going to come around and cut. This is actually a really long piece, so you need to have 12 inches of space where there's no clamp touching anything. So this is plenty big. Those clamps are plenty far away. The cutting area is only 12 inches. As long as you have 12 inches of clearance, you'll be fine. This is not clamping on very well. I'm going to turn this clamp around and use it the short direction. Just tighten down this handle. I'll flip this one around, use it the short direction. You're going to put this on the CNC going the long way. Don't have it be going the short way. Now you'll come over here and you'll get me once you get it clamped down, and I'll come over and I'll set this tool to find the exact center of the workpiece. So I'm going to say go over in the X negative direction. If this is a piece of graph paper, left is X negative. I want it to come down or towards me. That's Y negative. Something in math they don't teach you very much is there's an axis called the Z. That's up and down. It makes this three-dimensional. I want to come down towards me, Y minus. I want to go to the left, X minus. That's the exact center of my workpiece. All right, now I need to tell it the exact thickness of this workpiece. I'm going to touch off in the Z direction. It's ready to run. The depending on what size of ring you're doing, you can load different files on here. So I'm gonna load size 9 rings. I'm gonna do a size 9 and I'm gonna hit OK. And it's gonna start doing its thing. And I'm gonna vacuum up the shavings while it's working. When this stops, the spindle will stop and then it will raise up out of the material. Unclamp. You can pull this off now. It's ready to go. It's one tool. Each of those took about 4 minutes. You'll notice on one side it's nice and clean. On the back side it's kind of got all these crappy chips and stuff. Don't worry about that. We'll take care of that later. Let's go see which one of these fits our ring core. So this is my pen box. It has everything you need to do rings. In order to check this out, you need a collateral because, for kids to come over here and just start picking out rings, like rings get lost, rings get stolen, it's a disaster. So you have to check this out. If your friends come over here and they're like, hey, let me see this, throat chop them, okay? This is your box right now. Don't let them borrow it. I'm gonna go get a size 9. Okay, there's different thicknesses of size 9. So that's like a more feminine size 9. This is more of a man size 9. So depending on what thickness you want, you'll grab that. And some, I only have one thickness of, so sorry. Size 9 goes in there. Tear off the tag. And then see which one this fits in better. That one doesn't fit at all. Okay, this one's a really, really tight fit. So tight that I probably can't get glue in there. Ooh, okay. Now we're talking. That slides out in and out, but not so much that, like, not so tight that it's gonna be a pain in the butt, but not so loose that, like, it's floppy in there. This one, that one's slippery. This one is maybe usable. It's not a perfectly tight fit, but this is the one, the middle one. So that's why I drew some smaller and some bigger, so we could get an exact fit depending on, and I don't know, size 9 with this batch of rings that I just bought might work perfectly with the middle one. The next batch I buy, it might work with this one. I don't know. Figure out which one works best. Okay, you'll notice this is on a flat surface. Okay, this ring core, if I slip it in there, it slides in way too deep. This blank is thicker than the core. So I'm gonna take this over the drum sander and I'm gonna drum sand without the core in there because I don't wanna scratch up the core on the sandpaper. I'm gonna drum sand this side and this side, this side, this side, this side, this side, until it's the exact same thickness of my core, and I'm gonna stop. That's how I said, remember how this side's chippy? We're gonna drum sand those chips out, and we'll drum sand this, and we'll keep going until it's the exact same thickness. If you're lucky, you still have it set up from the last time you sanded this to a ½ inch thick. If somebody's used it between then, you'll have to reset it to the thickness of your material. Okay, so just measure, and then set the sander to that. But I already know this is still set up from the last time I sanded it about 10 minutes ago. once you get this perfectly level on both sides, okay, stop sanding. Don't keep going, because then you're just making it thinner than the core. Now, we can free this core. We're probably not going to use these top two or the bottom two. All I want is the middle one. So go over the bandsaw, set the height 1 inch to 1/8 above the material. So you want to free this middle one from all this other wood. Do not break it out. If you break it out, chances are it's going to chip out into the material that you actually want to save. So use the bandsaw. What? Oh. If any of these others work, you could use them if they're not too loose, but chances are they're not going to work. Okay. We're going to glue in. Don't use wood glue. We're going to glue in our core into here. You're going to use a 2-part epoxy. Grab a scrap of wood. Grab a nail. Or a screw, or something like that. I'm gonna go grab some rubber gloves. Rubber gloves are in the orange cabinet in the laser room. This epoxy will get on your fingers everywhere, so wear gloves. Okay, we're gonna mix equal parts of A, equal parts of B. So whatever size of dollop I put on here of A, I'll put the same size of dollop on here as B. Just as close as you can. Don't get out the scale and measure it. And you'll need about the size of a pea for each. And then you'll mix these together. Do not swirl them 3 times and, oh, I'm done. There's a chemical reaction which needs to happen here, and it can't happen if it's not thoroughly mixed. So I even mix the stuff that's on the nail. I mix the edges of this pool. I mix the center of this pool. I just mix it all around for a good 30, 40 seconds. One of the reasons rings don't work is because the glue is not properly mixed. Okay, when I put this on the inside of my core, I'm going to fully coat the inside of my core. I don't want to miss a spot and have a little dry spot, because then when I put this on the lathe, that spot of wood is not bonded to the core, and it will probably chip in that one tiny little spot that you didn't put any glue on there. So make sure when you get this all mixed, put a good solid coat on all of the inside, everywhere. It's better to have too much than too little. Too much, we can go through and we can clean it off later. Too little, and there's no fixing it. All right, I'm gonna slide my core into here. You got about 5 working minutes with this epoxy. I like to set the core down on something level and then push the blank down onto the same thing that's level, and it should be perfectly flat on both sides if I've done my job right. And then I wait about 5 minutes, and all this epoxy that's on the inside of my ring, I clean it up in about 5 minutes when it's not fully hard. But right now, see how this core can still move in and out because this glue is not fully set. I wait until the glue is about 5 minutes set before I start messing around and cleaning up this stuff on the inside. The more you can clean up on the inside now before it's completely hardened, the easier this will be later. All right, I'm gonna set this aside, let this dry at least overnight, and then you can come back and you can turn it on the lathe. I already have one ready to go. Okay, this one I glued up, it's cured, it's ready. We need to mount it on the lathe. Before we mount it on the lathe, we need to get bushings for it, and we need the attachment for the lathe. This is in here. We need to find the right size bushings. There's small, there's medium, there's large, and there's one of each. If you don't drop them and lose them. Or sorry, there's two of each. Okay, the small ones, if I were to mount this on and go small, ring blank, small, okay, and then put this nut on, this nut drives me crazy. It doesn't thread on both directions. Don't ask me why. It should, doesn't. So the small ones, that's too loose. These bearing or these bushings aren't holding it in place. I don't want that one. So let's go one. Let's put on the big ones. Okay, ring core, next bushing. These are so big that I can't see the core, and I wouldn't be able to turn down almost to the core. So for this size 9, I'm going to use the medium set of bushing. I'm going to go bushing, ring, bushing, nut. Hey, I put the nut on the right way that time. These bushings have a slight taper to them. This little ramp here, that will self-center the ring in the middle of these two bushings. Let's go over to the lathe. In the drawer, there's a thing called a knockout bar, and yes, it is labeled, and it has a little shadow of what it looks like. Oops, sorry. Goes right there. You're gonna take this knockout bar, whatever tool is in here from the last person, you knock it out from the backside and catch it as it falls out and through. There should be a little shadow for this drill chuck. Okay, it goes right there. Then this is threaded. This is threaded. I'm just gonna thread this on. Hold the headstock, make sure that's nice and tight. And then I'm gonna bring this tailstock over. This is not the one I want in here. I'm gonna take this one out. I just back this out until that falls out. Tailstock center. No, headstock center. And I want this. That should have been right there, 60-degree cone center. I'm gonna put this in. Okay, make sure that this groove is lined up. This groove is in line with this bolt. What a lot of people do is they let it spin to the side and then they try clamping down, and it's not clamping into a groove. That has to be in the up position or else it doesn't clamp very well. All right, I'm actually not gonna clamp the top part yet. I'm gonna bring the tailstock over, almost touching, but not quite. Lock down right here. This handle, lift up, over, cinch it down, it's set. Now I'm going to spin in just with my fingers on the tailstock. Once it gets tight and is touching with just finger pressure, okay, I'm gonna go a quarter turn more with my hand. That's as tight as you want it. Then I will lock down in the channel so the vibrations of this turning doesn't make this handle vibrate out and back and loose. This locks the tailstock in. All right, I'm going to get this rest as close as I can without actually touching. And I want to lock this down so that if you draw a line exactly down the center of the lathe. Okay, my tool, when I'm using it and I'm turning, the tip of the tool is slightly above the center line. Okay, so if I draw a center line all the way down through, the tip of the tool as it's sitting on the rest is slightly above center. I actually like that position right there. I'm going to turn this by hand to make sure that it doesn't touch any of the wood or any of the tailstock or headstock, so it clears everywhere. Turn it by hand before you actually turn it on. Open the dust collector port, and I always have this on the slowest speed when I start it, so if anything goes wrong, it's not going 1,000 miles an hour. And start. Okay, everything looks good. I'm going to turn the speed up. Let me turn this off for a second. Do you see on this blank how there's the tab and the tab? It wouldn't hurt before you actually mount this on the lathe to go sand the tabs smooth, but I'm probably just going to turn these on the lathe. You risk it catching on one of those tabs and then it just blasts the whole thing apart, but I feel like I can turn it, it'll be fine. Those tabs are gone. It's now starting to get round. I'm going to show you guys how to rub the bevel. There's a slight angle on the tip of this. Okay, it's not just straight down. There's a slight taper or an angle. I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to rub against that angle while I slowly lift up on the tool until the cutting edge engages. Once the cutting edge engages against the material and it starts cutting, I'm going to lock this backhand in, and that's the same angle that I want to use for all my cuts. You don't want to go too steep because then you risk the tool getting pulled in and it catching, and then the piece just explodes. So, rub the bevel, raise your arm, raise your backhand. As soon as it starts cutting, that's the position I want to lock in. I want to put a slight dome shape on this ring. I don't want to have a nice boring ring that's just straight across. I want a ring that looks like a normal gold ring that's got a slight dome to it. Okay, I wouldn't recommend you taking the ring off in the middle of turning, but I'm going to just to show you something. I'm going to move this tailstock back out of the way. I'm going to take this nut, loosen it, take off this first bushing. Do you see how this looks like a pretty thick ring? So between the core and the outside of the ring, there's probably at least, I don't know, I'm guessing about 1/8 of an inch. If you were to wear this, that's like, it's holding my fingers apart right there. So there's a happy medium between it's too thick, it's uncomfortable to wear, but there's also a spot where if you shave this layer of material too thin, you're going to hit the metal core and there's no more wood and it's going to explode, and now you don't have any wood on your wood ring and you'll have to start over. So I'm just trying to show you where you want to keep going until it's comfortable to wear, but not so thin you risk ruining the ring. I'm going to bring the tailstock up, almost touching, lock in the tailstock, hand wheel in, finger tight till it touches, quarter turn more, lock it in, bring the lathe in as close as you can without touching, Make sure it clears by hand. And now I'm ready to go. Turn it on the slowest. Everything's going true. Turn it on the fastest. Make sure you hang up your tools. Don't just set them on the table, then they risk getting the tips dulled. I'm gonna take this, move it out of the way. I'll even take off this rest so I don't have my elbow on it or my arm on it. I'm gonna, once I get down to where I think I'm almost good, I'm gonna do my final shaping with really aggressive 80 grit sandpaper. So this can take off a lot of material really fast. So instead of using the tool at the very last where I risk having a catch and then it exploding, I'm just gonna sand it down to exactly what I want. I'm gonna turn it to a medium speed so I don't build up too much heat. Remember, I want to keep that slight dome shape. I'm going to sand a little on the right. I'm going to sand a little bit on the left. Just to give it that slight taper or dome. Try not to sand the metal bushings if you can help it. Makes them last longer. I'm going to turn it off. I can see the core. I can tell how much I have left. I have like probably about a 1/16 of material left. Now this was the 80 grit. I'm just going to start stepping up through the grits and getting finer and finer. This is a 120, 180. It doesn't take long to sand a little ring. If this was a pin, it would take me probably a minute on each step. This ring's tiny, it's taking me like 10 or 15 seconds on each step. Okay, I'm gonna run over and grab a rag really quick because I'm just gonna do a friction polish on this. Make sure you shake the friction polish because it settles and separates. Okay, I'm just gonna use the corner of the rag. I'm gonna put a little, like 4 or 5 drops of friction polish on there, and then I'll turn this and I'll wet this in by hand. Let it soak in the material. Make sure you get it on the edges and the corners. Put a little more on. Let it soak in. I'm going to turn the lathe to like a medium speed. You go on the highest setting, it's going to get too hot and you'll probably burn your finger. I'm going to use friction to help cure the polish that's on there by generating a lot of heat. And you should be able to feel the friction or the heat through the cloth into your finger. It should be uncomfortable to the point where you want to let go and pull away. So if you don't feel that amount of heat, you're probably not pressing hard enough and you're not generating enough heat. Ow. I like to get the sides of it too. Ow. Ow. Let me do the middle again. Ow. That's one coat. I'll get a new spot on the rag. I'll wet it. I'll basically do the same thing 2-3 times. So when you're done, throw your rags away. I don't want a whole bunch sitting on the workstation. You can take this, back this out, take this off, and that is a size 9 walnut ring. Look how thin that material got. Okay, there's not much left. This is a precision operation. That's why when I got to the very end, I just started sanding. I didn't use a cutting tool, just so I could get exactly down to where I wanted to be without risk of blowing it up. Take all this stuff, take the headstock, take that off, take the bushings. If you want your collateral back that you borrowed, okay, that I borrowed while you borrowed this, bring this back to me, put it in the box, you get your stuff back. So that's the basic walnut ring. You could, if you wanted to do a more durable wood finish, you could do super glue finish. Look it up on YouTube, there's 100 videos. This is just the basic friction polish finish.